I sat in my car outside the little church in town, the windshield fogging from my breath. The evening bells dropped one heavy note at a time, like someone knocking on the inside of my chest. On the passenger seat was the divorce packet, cold, white pages with the signature of the man I once called home. Travis told me to sign everything over, give him everything. He said if I did, things would stay calm. He said I was just the one who stood in the kitchen, behind the front desk, behind his shoulder, nothing for anyone to take. I nodded. I signed. Not because I was weak, because I knew something he'd never bothered to see. And I kept asking myself, over and over, if I let him walk straight into the trap of his own greed, does that make me the villain? My name is May. I'm 58. If you met me at the Pine Ridge Lodge front desk, our little place tucked into pines and mountain air, you'd probably think I'm the quiet kind. The kind who says sorry too much. The kind who smiles even when she's tired. I used to believe that was who I was. 15 years ago, I had a steady job at the county office. The pay wasn't big, but it was regular. I had insurance. I had a retirement plan. I had a life that was fine, safe, predictable. Then Travis walked in like a man who didn't belong to a small mountain town and somehow made the whole town feel smaller around him. He was charming in a way that made people lean closer, bright eyes, a firm handshake, the kind of man who could stand up at the fall festival, tell a story into a microphone, and people would clap before he even finished the last sentence. He talked about dreams, about building a lodge for hikers and anglers and leaf peepers, a place with rocking chairs on the porch and warm breakfasts and lantern light. He said, "May, you're good with numbers. You understand people. You'll help me turn this into a home." And I believed him. I sold my old car. I pulled out savings. I quit my job. I stepped into Travis's life with the simplest faith a person can carry. That family is worth the trade. That love is a thick blanket. Wrap it tight enough, and the storm has to pass. Back then, Pine Ridge Lodge was just an old timber house tied to my Aunt June, my mother's aunt really, but she called me her girl anyway. Aunt June had lived her life like the mountains, sturdy, stubborn, weathered. She was older, living in another town, not coming back often. She'd left the lodge to the family to look after. Not in the way people say inherit, like it's a prize, more like a responsibility you set both hands under. She told me once, on the porch with a mug of tea trembling in her hands, "Treat it like a home, keep it warm, don't let the woods swallow it." That sentence stuck to me the way the smell of her cornbread did, sweet and warm and somehow painful. Travis put his name on contractor calls and advertising. He stood in front of people. I stood behind everything else. I cleaned rooms. I washed sheets. I planned breakfasts. I answered booking emails, negotiated with suppliers, chased permits, tracked every dollar. When guests arrived late, I waited under the yellow porch light, holding a blanket, listening to wind worry at the railing like it had teeth. There were winters the snow came down so heavy, the roads closed and cancellations stacked up like bad news. Travis would slam his hand on the table and say, "You need to fix this." So I cut costs. I patched things myself. I cooked with what we had. I learned to smile at guests, even when my wallet held nothing but wrinkled bills and receipts. I learned to say yes, even when my insides felt frozen. And then we lost our son. We had a boy named Evan. He died at 12, one small accident that the world never apologizes for. After the funeral, I still got up at 5 to make breakfast for guests because Travis said, "The lodge is all we have left." I clung to work the way you cling to rock in a storm. I told myself if I kept the lodge alive, I kept a piece of Evan. His laugh on the porch, his muddy shoes left by the door, the blue jacket hanging on the hook that I couldn't bring myself to wash. Grief has a way of making you lonely, even in a house full of people. Travis started changing slowly, like leaves turning one day at a time until you look up and the whole hill is different. He started loving church fundraisers, loving being seen as a good man. He'd stand in front of everyone and talk about family values and tradition, then come home and go quiet with me. I kept working. I kept smoothing things over. I kept telling myself, don't make small things big. Until late one fall afternoon, everything cracked, not with a bang, but with that small, sharp sound a lock makes when it breaks. I was at the little grocery store in town, the kind where everyone knows what you buy and why. I had my list in my hand: flour, butter, eggs, coffee, paper towels. Just normal things, ordinary. Then I heard laughter at the fruit display, bright and clinking like glass tapping glass. Travis was standing there, smiling at a young blonde woman in a sporty jacket. She looked like someone who had never spent a whole night sitting on a bathroom floor with a feverish child. She touched his hand like she belonged there. I stopped so hard my body went cold. Travis turned, saw me. His smile snapped off, then snapped back on, stiff. "May," he said, like my name was a polite formality. The woman tilted her head, looked me over the way you look at an old item on a clearance rack. Not with curiosity, with judgment. "This is Kayla," Travis said. "She's a trail guide." I heard myself whisper, "Hi." Kayla smiled and stared straight at the wedding ring on my finger. "Oh," she said. "He told me." I looked at Travis. I waited for a sentence, one explanation, 1 ounce of shame, anything. He rolled an apple in his palm like this was nothing and said, calm as a man choosing produce. "We'll talk at home." I forced the words out. "What is she to you?" Travis exhaled like I was a problem. "Don't make a scene in the grocery store." Kayla leaned forward just a little, her voice sweet. "I don't want to cause trouble, okay, May?" Hearing my name from her mouth felt like cold fingers on my throat. I dropped flour into my cart. My hands shook so badly I spilled some. I walked away with my face burning, and behind me I heard Kayla laugh softly, and Travis say, "Just leave it." That night he didn't apologize. He said, "I'm tired. Don't turn little things into big things." I asked in the smallest voice I had, like if I spoke too loud it would break me. "Do you still love me?" He looked at me with eyes that didn't feel like home anymore. "May," he said, "you always make everything heavy." 2 weeks later, the divorce papers arrived. Travis dropped the packet on the kitchen table, the table where I used to set out Aunt June's cornbread, where Evan used to swing his legs and grin. Travis spoke like a man negotiating a business deal. "I'm taking the lodge, the house, the car, the work. You can keep whatever you like." I stared at the list and saw the lodge written there like a product, like it wasn't the place I'd lived and breathed and cried. I wanted to scream that I had poured my life into those walls. But I didn't scream. I just heard the clock ticking like footsteps over ashes. He leaned in, voice low and practical. "You sign quickly and I'll let you live in peace." And inside my head, a thought slid through, small, cold, sharp. He really thinks it's his. I thought of Aunt June. Don't let the woods swallow it. I thought of the old files in the drawer, papers Travis had never read because paperwork was my job. He always acted like details were women's work, like the truth lived somewhere beneath him. I stood up, poured a glass of water. My hands didn't shake. "Okay," I said, "I'll sign." Travis let out a breath like he'd just dropped a weight. What he didn't know was I was dropping something too. I was dropping the habit of begging him to see me. Travis slid a pen across the table, smiling like a man finally free, and he said, "Sign it. So starting today, you disappear from my life." The day I carried my boxes out of the lodge, the air was cold enough for frost to cling to the porch steps. I didn't take much: a few clothes, a framed photo of Evan, a little notebook where I'd written down things Evan used to say, the simple lines you don't realize are sacred until they're all you have left. Kayla stood in the doorway in a loose sweater, holding my coffee mug like it belonged to her. "Need help?" she asked, voice honey-sweet, eyes not sweet at all. I looked into the kitchen and saw my tablecloth, my spice jars, the corner where Evan used to sit and eat cornbread, butter shining on his lips. I heard Travis's voice in my head again. "You make everything heavy." "No," I said. "I'm fine." I walked to my car. I didn't cry in front of them. I saved my tears for somewhere private. I forgot small towns don't have private. I moved into a tiny apartment above my cousin's auto shop. The first night I lay there listening to engines downstairs, wind slipping through the window frame, silence pressing down from the ceiling. I held Evan's photo against my chest like it could stop me from falling apart. Travis called twice. The first time he said, "My lawyer needs you to sign a few more documents. Don't make this difficult." The second time his voice was irritated. "What are you telling people? Kayla says someone looked at her weird." I laughed without sound. "I'm not telling anyone anything," I said. "I'm just disappearing like you wanted." There was a pause. Then he said a sentence that made my blood go cold. "You should know your place. You don't have anything, May." I hung up and stared at my hands. These hands had washed thousands of sheets, written thousands of numbers, held my son one last time. These weren't the hands of someone who had nothing, but the town didn't see that. The town saw Travis, the good man, the donor, the smiling face at the church fundraiser. The next Sunday I went to church and sat in the very back row. I didn't want anyone to see the empty place in my eyes. I just wanted the bells, the hymns, a quiet corner of God where I could breathe without being judged. The pastor preached forgiveness. People nodded like it was easy. Travis sat near the front with Kayla beside him. Kayla wore a light-coloured dress. Her hair was curled soft. Travis's hand rested on her shoulder like he was proving something. I stared at the back of their heads like I was staring at a door that had closed. After service, Martha, the woman who ran the charity fund, came up and took my hand. "May," she said softly, "you need to be gentle. Don't turn it into a fight. Men get touchy when they're questioned." I gave a small smile. "I'm not fighting," I said. "I'm just trying to live." Martha sighed like I was a stubborn child, then flicked her eyes toward Travis. "Travis is a good man. He donates. He comes to church. Don't make people think badly of him." That sentence lodged in my throat. Going to church doesn't erase betrayal. Donating doesn't buy decency. I wanted to say it out loud. I didn't. At the church doors, I heard two women whispering, not realizing I was close enough to hear every word. She always had to control everything. Poor Travis. He needed someone more cheerful. I walked out into the cutting wind, and something in me turned over. The worst part wasn't just that my husband left me, it was that the town was framing me as the problem because I didn't know how to smile at my own humiliation. That night I opened an old file box. I pulled out papers from when Aunt June was still strong, deeds, maps, notarized documents, handwritten letters. Travis had never once asked to see any of it. He signed what I put in front of him and strutted through town like the world was simple. In a yellowed envelope, there was a letter from Aunt June in shaky but clear handwriting. "May, if one day you have to stand alone, remember, the lodge is not something anyone gets to snatch. It's responsibility, it's legacy. You are the one keeping the fire." I pressed that letter to my chest and I cried. Really cried, the way you cry when you've been holding your breath for years. I called Aunt June. She answered slowly, her voice old but sharp. "Are you okay?" she asked, straight to the point. I tried to say yes. I couldn't. I just cried. She listened without interrupting. When I finally stopped, she said, "All right, listen, don't tell him anything, don't argue, let him think he's winning." I wiped my face with my sleeve. "But Aunt June, I feel pathetic, like I'm letting him do it." She cut me off. "No, pathetic is knowing someone's stomping on you and still laying yourself down like a rug. You're not doing that, you're standing up." She told me to meet with Attorney Harper, an older woman in the county who was known for being fearless in court. Harper sat across from me, flipped through my paperwork, and her eyes paused on the seals and signatures. She didn't speak right away. She just exhaled like someone seeing a road appear. "May," she said, "you did something rare. You kept the papers. I just did the work, I whispered. Harper tapped one page with her finger. This lodge is part of Aunt June's estate structure. There's a lifetime management authority. You're the steward. Travis appears on some operational contracts because you authorized it during the marriage, but that doesn't give him ownership. My heart kicked hard, like it remembered how to fight. So, can I get it back? I asked. Harper looked at me straight. You're not getting it back. You're protecting what was never his. But you need to be careful. If Travis finds out early, he'll try to destroy it. We bring the truth out at the right moment, in front of the judge. I swallowed. So you're saying I keep signing? Harper nodded. You sign what doesn't hurt you, and in court we show the judge. You can't divide what never belonged to the marriage. You don't have to win by yelling. You win with ink. I left her office under a flat grey sky. On my way back I passed the grocery store, the place where everything started. I stood for a moment staring at people going in and out, thinking, the world keeps moving, only I've been stuck in pain. But that night I decided I was done being stuck. I did exactly what Harper and Aunt June told me. I told no one. I let the town keep believing I was surrendering. I let Travis keep performing. Travis showed up everywhere with Kayla, church, coffee shop, the festival grounds, grinning like a man reborn. People clapped his back. People called him brave for starting over. And people looked at me like I was the bitter shadow he'd finally escaped. I went back to work at the town library, shelving children's books, wiping tables, smiling politely. I heard the whispers. I heard the label. Difficult, controlling. The ex-wife who couldn't let go. I swallowed it like medicine that burned. Then one evening Travis called, his tone unusually gentle. May, he said, we can be civil. Just sign everything quickly. I'll let you take a few things from the storage room. In the background I heard Kayla laugh, light, sharp, like a fingernail tapping glass. Okay, I said. The day I signed, Travis sat across from me in the notary office, arms crossed, looking at me like I'd already lost. I signed page after page without looking up. I heard the pen scratching paper, a small sound, but inside me it sounded like a lock turning. Travis stood, smiling. See? He said. That wasn't hard. I nodded. I didn't argue. All I thought was, no, it isn't hard, when you don't understand who the door is locking out. The night before court, I went back to the church. It was empty, quiet. I sat alone and thought of Evan, thought of Aunt June, thought of all the years I stood behind the stove while Travis stood in front of people like a saviour. I pressed a hand to my chest and whispered, I'm sorry I stayed silent for so long. I'm not staying silent anymore. The next morning, I walked into the courthouse and saw Travis smiling like a man who'd already buried me. The courtroom was small. It smelled like old wood and paper. The fluorescent lights made everyone look paler than they really were. I sat beside Harper, hands folded tight on my knee, reminding myself, breathe, May, just breathe. Travis walked in with his attorney, a young man in a well-fitted suit. Kayla followed, lips glossy, eyes scanning the room like she was picking a seat at a restaurant. She looked at me and smirked, small, cheap, satisfied. Travis didn't look at me for long. He passed me like I was an old chair in a corner. The judge, a silver-haired woman with a stern face, asked about the agreement. Travis's attorney presented it with confidence. Travis would receive ownership and operation of Pine Ridge Lodge and related assets. I would receive a small amount and step away. The judge looked at me. Mrs. May, she said, do you agree to this? I looked straight ahead. My voice came out quiet but clear. Your Honour, I signed what they put in front of me, but I need the court to see one document before anything is finalised. Travis's lawyer frowned. We've submitted all required paperwork. Harper stood. Her voice was calm as stone. Your Honour, we'd like to submit additional documents regarding the actual ownership of Pine Ridge Lodge. I saw Travis lean forward slightly, like he couldn't quite believe what he was hearing. The judge nodded. Bring it up. Harper handed over the packet. I saw notarized seals, Aunt June's signature, stamps that regular people don't understand, but courts do. The judge flipped page by page. The room went quiet. The paper made that soft shuffling sound like dry leaves underfoot. Travis's body shifted, restless. He glanced at his lawyer like he was asking, "What is this?" The judge paused on one page and held it longer. Then she looked up at Travis. "Mr. Travis," she said, "were you aware that Pine Ridge Lodge is part of a family estate structure and that Mrs. May holds lifetime management authority under this instrument?" Travis opened his mouth. No sound came out. His lawyer started flipping through his own file, his face changing color. "Your Honor, we were not provided this document," he said. The judge tilted her head. "Mr. Travis, did you request a title review and estate review prior to insisting you take the lodge?" Travis swallowed. I thought it was mine. I'm the husband. I run it." Harper spoke slowly, cleanly. "Your Honor, the lodge was placed under Aunt June's estate plan. Mrs. May is the lifetime steward to preserve the legacy and operate it for the community. Mr. Travis appears on some operational contracts because Mrs. May authorized it during the marriage. That does not create ownership." Behind Travis, Kayla's eyes widened like someone realizing the thing she wanted wasn't a handbag you could just grab and walk out with. She leaned toward Travis and whispered something I couldn't hear, but I saw her mouth tighten, the look of someone doing math fast. Travis turned to her, a flash of panic in his eyes, then snapped back forward. And for the first time in that courtroom, he really looked at me, not with contempt, with confusion, with fear, like a man realizing his foundation was made of cardboard. The judge kept turning pages. "There is also a protective clause here," she said, her voice sharper now. "If the steward's spouse engages in coercion, threats, or harm in an attempt to seize control, the operational authority transfers to a local preservation trust per the named plan." Travis jolted. "What? That's not possible." Harper didn't flinch. "Your Honor, we would also like to submit call recordings and messages in which Mr. Travis states Mrs. May has nothing and pressures her to sign under duress. That triggers the protective provision." Travis's lawyer stood up quickly. "Objection!" The judge raised her hand. "Sit down." Then she turned to me. "Mrs. May," she said, "what do you want?" In that moment, Evan came back to me like a warm ache. I saw him running across the porch, slipping in snow, laughing with his whole body. I heard Aunt June's voice. "Keep it warm. Don't let the woods swallow it." My throat tightened. My hands trembled, but my voice didn't break. "Your Honor," I said, "I want the lodge to survive as a legacy. I don't want it to be used as a weapon to punish someone. I'm willing to cooperate with the Preservation Trust, exactly as my aunt intended, and I'm asking to keep my stewardship, because that was the promise my family placed in my hands." The judge nodded once, small, like she understood that some things can't be measured in dollars. Then she looked at Travis. "Mr. Travis," she said, "the agreement you submitted assumes you have ownership to receive. The documents show you do not. The portion of this agreement regarding Pine Ridge Lodge cannot be executed as you demanded." Travis half stood, his voice rising, almost pleading. "But I built it. I put work into it." That sentence hit me like a fist, because I did too. I put my life into it. But no one ever listened when I said that out loud. The judge's voice stayed cold. "You may petition the court regarding contributions. You may not take what does not belong to you." Behind him, Kayla stood up with her purse like she'd already decided the ship was sinking. She murmured something, and I watched her step away. Faster than loyalty, faster than love. Travis watched her go with eyes that suddenly looked empty. At the end of the hearing, the decision was clear. I retained stewardship under the estate structure. The lodge would move into a cooperative preservation framework to prevent abuse. Other assets would be handled under the remaining agreement. Travis could pursue a claim for specific improvement costs, but he could not seize the lodge. When everyone stood to leave, Travis rushed toward me in the hallway. "May," he said, breath tight. Did you trick me?" I looked at him, this man who used to be my home, who loved standing in the light and believing the light belonged to him. My voice came out very soft. "No, Travis, I just stopped protecting you from the truth." He froze, and I walked past him like I was walking past a door that had been closed for years. Outside, the air was cold and clean. I took a deep breath. For the first time in a long time, I breathed without asking permission. Travis called my name behind me, but in the wind, I heard something louder than his voice. I was done being the woman who turns back. A month later, I stood on the Pine Ridge porch with a mug of hot tea, watching the pines sway. The woods were still there, the wind was still there. But inside the lodge, there was no more Kayla laughter bouncing off the walls. No more Travis barking orders like a little king. I signed the cooperative agreement with the local preservation trust, retired teachers, a former ranger, a handful of older folks who didn't have money but had something better, respect for what lasts. They didn't look at the lodge like a prize, they looked at it like a memory. We started a new program, off-season rates for seniors. Couples with silver hair came and sat in the rocking chairs, telling stories about their kids, their pensions, their mistakes, the ways life taught them hard lessons, and they still kept going. For the first time in years, laughter didn't hurt me. One Sunday after church, Martha came to the front desk. She stood there twisting a handkerchief, like shame had weight in her fingers. "May," she said, not meeting my eyes, I'm sorry, I judged you." I looked at her. I remembered the way she'd told me to be gentle, to stay quiet. I remembered how she'd glanced toward Travis like power was something you protect by protecting the man who holds it. "I understand," I said. "In a small town, people believe the one standing in the spotlight." Martha blinked fast, her voice catching. Do you hate us?" I thought of the back pew, the whispers, the grocery store air turning cold, Kayla saying my name like a bruise. "I don't hate you," I said. "I just learned not to hand my life over to rumors." News about Travis moved fast. Kayla left town. People said she moved somewhere more fun. Travis stayed, quieter. He took a job with a construction crew in the next county. He stopped showing up at the festival like a hero. He stopped standing at the church doors shaking hands with that wide smile. Once I saw him in the grocery store, the place it started. He was at the fruit display. No confident grin. Just a man staring at apples like he didn't know what to do with them. He saw me. His mouth opened like he wanted to speak. Then he didn't. I nodded politely, like he was someone I used to know. I didn't feel victorious. I felt light. But the most important part of my ending wasn't Travis. It was a Thursday night, one I'd promised Harper and Aunt June I would do. I would turn what happened to me into a lesson, so other people didn't pay the same price. The library has a small community room, old posters on the walls, spring gardening, kids' reading hour. I set folding chairs in a circle. I brewed hot tea. I baked cornbread, Aunt June's recipe. They arrived one by one. Frank, 72, a retired mechanic with hands like worn leather. Lillian, 68, a widow with tired eyes. The Coopers, white-haired, still holding hands. And a tall, thin man with glasses named Walter, quiet but watchful. I stood in front of them with a few sheets of paper trembling slightly in my hand. I wasn't a speaker. I was the woman who used to stand behind a stove. "Thank you for coming," I said. "I'm not here to drag anyone. I'm here to tell you something I learned too late." Someone gave a small half laugh, the kind that says, "Who hasn't been through something?" But the room got still when I kept going. "I thought love would protect me," I said slowly. "I thought if I was good, people would be good back. But life isn't always fair like that. Sometimes what saves you isn't a promise, it's paperwork." Lillian lifted her tea, her voice shaky. "Paperwork? Like what, May?" "Wills," I said. Trusts, powers of attorney, titles, who is actually named, what clauses protect you, knowing where your home really stands and who can touch it. Frank nodded. I hate that stuff. I always let my wife handle it. A few people chuckled. I smiled too, but my smile tasted salty. I used to be the one who handled it, I said, and I used to be dismissed for handling it. Walter, the quiet man, spoke suddenly, barely above a whisper. My son is pressuring me to sign my house over. He says it'll be easier to care for me. I don't know what to do. The room went silent. Walter's hands shook on his knees. I saw fear in his eyes, the fear older people carry when their future starts living inside someone else's signature. I walked over and sat so I was level with him. Do you trust your son? I asked. Walter looked down. I want to, but he gets angry. He tells me I'm old, that I don't understand anything. That line hit me so hard I almost flinched. Old. You don't understand. You have nothing. Different words, same blade. I took Walter's hand gently and spoke slowly. Trust isn't signing, I said. Trust is being able to say no and still be respected. If you sign because you're scared, because you're rushed, because you're isolated, that isn't trust, that's being pushed. Mrs. Cooper blinked, tears spilling. My sister, her kids put her in a facility and sold her house. She thought she was signing a temporary authorization. A small sob came from somewhere in the circle. No one laughed anymore. I pulled out a simple sheet I'd written by hand and passed it around like you pass a coat on a cold night. Know whose name is on your home, your land, your accounts. Ask a lawyer about wills, trusts, powers of attorney. Never sign while you're afraid, rushed, or alone. And most important, talk to someone you trust before it's too late. Frank stared at me, voice rough. Do you hate your ex? I paused and looked out the little window into the dark pines. I thought of Evan. I thought of all the years I stood behind the stove believing I was keeping the family together. I don't hate him anymore, I said. Hate is exhausting. I just regret. I regret staying silent so long that other people told my story for me. Lillian wiped her face. So do you feel cruel for letting the truth drop on him like that? Her question landed right on the same question I'd carried since the day I sat in my car outside the church. I answered slowly, each word placed like a stone. I didn't set a trap for anyone, I said. I just stopped being a rug people wipe their feet on. I only held on to what greed never had the right to touch. Walter nodded, eyes red. Thank you, he whispered. I won't sign anything fast anymore. When the meeting ended, no one rushed to leave. They stayed and told stories about children who pressured them, siblings who fought over inheritance, years of keeping the peace until the peace cost everything. And for the first time, I didn't feel alone. That night I went back to the lodge. I opened my drawer and took out Evan's notebook. I read the messy little line he'd written when he was small, Mum is home. I laid my hand on the page and whispered, I'm still here. And for the first time in a very long time, I slept without dreaming of being shoved out the door.